talking about the media stores in this section. So the media stores are in two different types and groups. The first group is the global store. Now the global store is located on the main CPU card of the production switcher. And when I map those channels, still 1 through 4, I find them on my panel. And as we can see, as we select those stills, the menu will be called up and we'll see the menu in front of us. So here we have a menu, and it's our still store menu. On the right hand side, we can see location, and we can see that in the location we have our global store, and also you have ME stores. So same thing as if I select the cross point of one of those, it's going to go to that menu and it's going to call up that still store channel as well as bring the menu up. So the auto follow menu follows with the system. So the 4-channel global store, which is on the CPU card, gives us 4 gigabytes of RAM cache, and it all loads from the internal hard drive that's located in the frame. That frame hard drive, we can transfer stills to it from either the USB on the panel. So when we look at the panel, the USB port here, we can load stills by placing those in the root of the USB, and they can be Targa, JPEG, PNG, bitmap, they can be sequential Targa, sequential PNG. Both PNG and Targa can have alpha channels as well. Along with the global store, we have our ME stores. So when we look at the GUI, we can see those ME store locations. ME store locations come with the ME. So every ME I have gives me an additional 4 channels with 8 gigabytes of RAM cache. So in this case, I have a 4 ME switcher, which means I have 4 channels, 4 channels, 4 channels, 4 channels, each with 8 gigabytes. So that's 32 gigabytes with my ME store channels of 16, and then another 4 gigabytes with my 4-channel global store. So in this configuration, that's a total of 20 channels of MediaStore with 36 gigabytes of RAM cache. And it all loads from that internal hard drive and loads into RAM cache. Okay, so we take that RAM cache and we load it from that hard drive. And even when we transfer from USB, it comes into the channel and we select and manage. So if I pick a channel, so I pick a still store like channel 1, I currently have an animation loaded into it. And I know this because it tells me it's number 97, it tells me its size, tells me there's 31 frames. But it's easy for me to see because of this. There's a movie file icon that the switcher will automatically place on top of the icon when it generates it to show there's more than 1 frame. It's an animation or a movie file. Because this is a Targa or PNG sequence of images that has an alpha channel associated with it, then it also knows to tell us there is a key channel. So there's a key. Channel 1 will always load the alpha automatically into channel 3. Channel 2 will always load its alpha automatically into channel 4. So the video and alpha automatically load together as a pair, and they are not separate files. If they're recorded as separate files, then you would call them up as 2 individual files and they would auto-play together. But for images that we transfer in or capture with alpha in real time, we don't have to do those as 2 separate files. The other benefit of this is it uses less storage. So when I view, and for example, look at the RAM cache, you'll notice that an individual frame of 1080 would be 5.5 megabytes of space. And if we look at a frame that has an alpha, it's only 8.3 megabytes of space. Because this is a 4224 capture, it knows that it doesn't need to use the full image with YUV. It just needs Luma. So instead of it being 11 megabytes, if I was to have 2 full frames, it knows to only allocate the needed amount of memory for the alpha channel. So this does mean when you load video in alpha, it doesn't cut your number of frames in half. By loading it using proper PNG or targas that have the embedded alpha, you will reduce the overall amount of cache that is required, thus increasing the number of frames that you can have in RAM cache. All right, so we now know how to call up the menu. Just select the cross point, the menu auto follows. Now, if I didn't want to call it up that way, if I was doing something else in my menu, and I wanted on the menu just to, call it up quick, you'll notice there is the Quick Still Store tab, and that will automatically load it up. And of course, if I want to keep it there and pin it so it doesn't go away, I can simply just send it to the top menu by hitting the swap or the copy up. So now it's up there, it won't go anywhere. So we'll go ahead and swap it back down. So I have my channel, and now I want to manage that, meaning I want to do something with what's in the channel. So select and manage. When I open this up, it now gives me the file browser. So here it dumps me into the last location that we were in, which happened to be the folder ROS with a subfolder 1080i, subfolder animations. So on the left-hand side here, I can move up a directory at a time. Also, in this directory, I can navigate the files by pressing the page up and page down button. So I can go up to the parent directory. So inside of 1080i folder, I happen to have animations, masks, and stills. So if we look at the still folder, and double tapping is the same thing as having selected stills and press the select button. So here we have a large list of them. And we could scroll through the list really fast and you'll see it move along. As well as we can use these page down and page up to move 20 of these at a time. See the thumbnail, be able to easily select what I want and load it into the channel. There you can see how fast it takes for a single frame to load. It is extremely quick because it's loading from this internal hard drive. Now once in RAM cache, it's instantaneous. So as we fill up that RAM cache, then it fills up, it will throw the oldest stuff out. And we'll see that when we go to the cache menu. All right, so we can see what it is, we can see the properties, and we can see the still ID. When we're navigating through these items, you'll notice on the left-hand side, we've got kind of an ID viewer or a focus viewer. So whatever is selected in the white, on the left-hand side over here, we'll see a larger preview of it. I can see that it has a key channel. I can see that it has the film. And it tells me here that it's 31 frames, 1920 by 1080, that it does have an alpha, and it has a media ID number of 97. Now, if I wanted to rename this item, it's actually quite simple. I could click on Rename, and it brings up a menu that I could go and rename that file. Now, even if I rename this file or move its location, I never have to worry because this ID number is what the database is tracking. So when these files were added to the switcher, the database automatically assigns it. So whether it's transferred via that USB drive, so whether or not it's transferred via the USB drive here, or it's already inside of the frame because it was transferred via FTP over the network to the frame, as soon as that file is created, the database automatically assigns it the available ID number that's available. Now, you can delete files and then reassign those numbers to other files. So for example, I'm going to replace this with a newer version of a sponsor wipe. I don't have to worry about modifying my memories or custom controls now that I've changed the file type. Okay, so that's renaming. Change directory. So to change the directory, we can use that parent directory. and we can go all the way up to the root. And here in the root, you can see we have a directory. So if I want to delete this directory, right, that's now gone. Because there was nothing in it, it was able to delete it without prompting me to say, there are items inside, would you like to delete them as well? So if I needed to create a new directory for a new show, create directory, this is going to be my hockey show, so I'll type in hockey, accept new name. And as I can see, these directories are created, and the file structure is directories first, followed by media items afterwards, or individual files. And again, it places everything in alphabetical order. So that's how we create a directory. So if I wanted to copy from USB, I simply place the USB into this location, the USB port, blink. Make sure that it's in the root of that USB drive. It's not going to go hunting through folders. It's designed so that whatever you put in the root, it'll transfer all of it into this USB folder. So once I've transferred, I go inside, and now all those items are now locally on the hard drive. And now they've also been assigned an ID number. So again, they're now part of the database. They're fully available, whether that USB is there or not. If power is changed, we power up the truck, we power down the truck. Never have to worry that I have to transfer them back into the system again. They're always there. If I wanted to, I can also copy to USB. So had I made a capture, and I want to take this capture, and I want to transfer it onto a USB drive, again, same thing, plug into the USB drive here, and now I just simply press the copy to USB, and it would copy it to USB. Of course, in this case, unable to copy to USB drive because there's none plugged in. And of course, if we don't care about these, we simply hit the delete, and yes, I want to delete that entry. So now it deletes the entry and frees up that media ID as well. If I want to move a file, so I want to take this image here and I want to move it, I simply can cut it, so it'll remove it from this location. I could go to this new folder I'd created for this item and go ahead and paste it. And now it maintained the same number, same name, same everything. It's just now moved it out of that location and placed it into a different location. I could also hit the delete all, which would delete everything in this location. All right, so now that we know how to select and manage our files, let's go ahead and come back up one level. So there are two methods for loading stills. Clicking on it, double tapping, going and looking for the item that you want. And of course, double tapping or pressing the select button. You also can just type in the ID number. So when we look at the panel, I can see that my still store channel is highlighted. Currently channel 1, and the current ID in it is 121, right? Which matches, by the way, just remember 97, which matches what's currently loaded in the channel. So if I wanted to load something in channel 2, if I press channel 2, we'll say on preset, of course, this here in the menu is highlighted and changed. So that's now our focus. And it now says channel 2, 99. So we want to load into channel 1 that wipe. And remember, we said remember 97. So I type in 97 and I hit enter. And now it loads it into that channel. And again, we didn't have to worry about the load speed. It was instantaneous. And that's because this was sitting in RAM cache. So now that we've loaded a media item, how do we manage the properties? How do we set it up, especially if it's the first time that a media item has come into the switcher? So we go into on-air properties. You can select whether you want it to play by frame or individual fields or to swap fields. You can set the color mode. Now this is useful if something was done with the wrong color space. This will do the automatic interpolation by telling it what was stored, what color space was stored in it. Also, you can flag whether or not this is supposed to be a shaped or unshaped key type. So when this does its alpha mapping, is it supposed to tell the keyer to perform an additive key type or a non-additive key type? And it's all how the file was saved. And in this case, it's supposed to be shaped. So because of this flag, when we load this in, it'll automatically tell a keyer, hey, you're supposed to use shaped keying. If I load in an unshaped key type, it will automatically tell the keyer to not do that and to use unshaped keying. All right, so once we've set those parameters, we can simply hit the set properties as default. Now, if this MediaStore item was supposed to replace a different wipe in another area, so I loaded in this new one and it was supposed to replace a previous ID number that we had deleted away. You have the ability to come over here and not just rename it inside of the menu, but you can now use the keypad down here to renumber that still. So I can now give it a new ID number and save it. And if I tried to give it the ID number of something that already existed, like let's say number 99, it'll tell us you can't do that because that already exists. So it won't let you accidentally overwrite an existing ID number. It's just going to allow you to replace it with an available ID number. All right, so coming back to our GUI. If this image was not full frame, you would get the option of performing image scaling, so automatically sizing it up. Somebody gives you, say, a 720 file, you're operating in 1080. This will automatically scale it. Or they give you an image that is of a size that's not a native switcher resolution. Image scaling will resize it to 1920 by 1080 and then clip whatever wasn't in the 16 by 9 window, doing it from a center type cut. Also, if I have something like a bug or a lower third, I don't want to apply image scaling because I only want to render that small amount of image. But what's nice is you will get a positional editing ability. So let's go see if we can find a graphic similar to this. So here's a great example. You'll notice how fast this is loading into the switcher. And that's because it's actually only 1920 by 1050. And in what we're doing here is we're going to create a graphic. So we're going to load that graphic and we'll put it into a keyer so we'll be able to see it. And this is loading into RAM cache, but it's 91 frames. However, it's 91 frames extremely fast. And again, from that hard drive, so we'll always have access to it. So when we put this on air and we look at this graphic and we see it, we'll notice that it's playing out those frames. So when we come in and we look at the on-air properties, when this was stored, you'll notice that image scaling was set to off because we didn't want it stretching and scaling and modifying the overall video size. The other thing that we were given is the ability to move it in X and Y space. Now, because it was 1920 by 1080 wide, we obviously did not need to do anything for X. But in the case of Y, you'll notice that you can adjust where it's located up and down. So again, if we captured just a small bug like that live region, we'd be able to position it exactly where we want it, and it would always call it up because of these values in the menu of where those positions are. And again, this was supposed to be a shaped key, and so instead of unshaped keying, it will force the keyer to perform shaped keying. So that additive on type keying. So now that we have that MediaStore loaded in, the other thing that you're going to find is what we call the media properties. So here in the media properties, now we have a bunch of options. reverse play. So is it supposed to play forward or is it supposed to play in reverse? And all of these can be programmed inside of custom controls. So I can have a macro to trigger reverse play on a channel, not permanently setting it as a property, but turning this on and off to the active item in a channel. Autoplay. So what autoplay is for is when it cuts on air, is it supposed to automatically start? And then you have looping. The other benefit of autoplay is that even with looping on, whenever it cuts on, it will start from the first frame. So even if it's off air, looping in a channel, you will see it when it cuts on air, start from the first frame every time. Play speed. If you want, you can adjust the play speed so it can play faster, it can play slower, it can play whatever you like. Looping. Is it supposed to loop or not loop? Does it play out and then stop, or did you want it to loop forever? So this was built as a continuous looping animation of 91 frames so that it can continually loop on and on. Single frame can be useful when you only want to play out a single frame of the media item. Also, this is how we pick our thumbnail. We turn on single frame, we move to the frame that we want because we can view it in real time like you saw right here. You can see in the program window I'm moving to the frame that I want. Then I press the create thumbnail. And now it has created the new thumbnail for that media item. And now I release it, go back to single frame, turning that off. Also, if I captured this animation or if the animation was a little off, I could actually come in and I could trim the animation. So we could say that it's only to play to there. So now when we trim the animation, obviously we're seeing a hiccup in that. So we'll turn trim off, and now we can see the perfect, proper, full loop taking place. So again, being able to edit and trim those animations. Once we have everything set the way we like, we can come up and we can set properties as default. So now these properties have been set, and every time we load media item 102, it will load all of these properties along with that media item. And again, we select channel 1, we want to go back to 97, and it loads in. And of course, because the key was on air, it autoplayed. So that's your on-air properties. Next, we have the capture menu. So when we go into the capture menu, the first thing we do is select the source. So in the upper right-hand side, we can select where or what bus we're getting the source from. We could get it from preview, or we could pick any aux bus as a source following device. It's not that this aux bus is actually being fed physically into the global store. We are just using this as what bus to reference. So if on aux 1.3, I select server channel 4, this is what is going to capture into the device. We can pick the total number of frames that we want it to capture. And then we can pick whether or not it's supposed to capture with or without alpha. You want to capture with alpha when you're ingesting from a CG or clip player that is feeding you the video and the alpha simultaneously. If you need to capture from, say, tape, a video and alpha separately, then you need to do those as two separate video files and load them simultaneously when you build your effect. That is different. This is about capturing it and writing it to the Targa as a 4224 item, not a 422 item. All right, so in this case, we're going to say no because we're capturing single source. Position and size. So like that lower third that we showed, you can pick what your X and Y and your overall size is. So you can squeeze down and just capture the area of, say, a bug or a lower third and save a lot of space in the RAM cache when it's loaded in, since you don't need to play back a whole bunch of black empty space. You can also simply move the top from the left top, bottom right, so making it easier to use the joystick and just pick where on the screen it would be. And using the preview overlay, this can be layered right on top of preview so that you can see it in real time. You can also change the directory that you want to capture too. So you could go into change directory and you could go all the way up to the parent directory. You could create a new directory here. So we could create a directory and call it captures. And now we could select that as our directory. So now we can see that from source, channel 1, and we're going to capture to the captures directory. So now that we have it set up, on the second page, this is where we can now perform our capture. And there are two options when we're capturing. We can capture directly to disk, so directly to the hard drive, so it'll capture it in and save it all at once. Or what we can do is simply capture to RAM. So there, it captured to RAM for us and created that thumbnail. So I can also see that it is unsaved. So it captured this for us. We see that there's a movie file, and we see that it hasn't been saved yet. What's useful about this is now we can go into our on-air properties. I can go to that media property, and now I can use this trim point before I've even captured and saved the clip. So we can turn on single frame, and I could say, well, that's where I want to start. So I want to start at frame 7. So I'm going to say I want frame 7. Then I want to go to the end. And frame 52 is where we want to be. So we'll go ahead and say I want 52. So now that we've got those set as our trim points, 7 and 52, that's exactly what we want. We don't want it to loop, but we want it to autoplay. That's exactly how that clip's going to look. So now, unshaped is fine. It is HD color modes. I want to play in frame mode. Set properties as default. Those have been set. So now, you'll see that in our capture menu, we have an unsaved capture, maybe overwritten if not saved. So now we have the button available to us, Save Capture to Disk. So we go ahead and we click on Save Capture. So now you can see it writing those frames to the hard drive. So it's taking that RAM cache and it's writing it to the hard drive and creating this file for us. We could abort and cancel it, as well as we could have cycled through different multiple DDR frames. Here, what you'll notice is it's telling us the maximum capture size available to us right now is 633 frames. That is because of all of the elements that are currently sitting inside of the RAM cache. If I wanted to free up more space, we would have to go into the RAM cache manager and eject items and then move them out of cache. So we'll come back once that's done saving and we'll look at it. So assign as default. Assigning a clip as default allows me to pick a clip or a still and say assign as default. Now, this item, when we reboot the switcher or reload the switcher, it will always load this media ID number as the default for channel 2. And because there's an alpha, it's automatically going to load channel 4 for us as well. Channel 1 will load its alpha channels into channel 3. Channel 2 will load its alpha channels into channel 4. And this is common across all of the ROS production switchers, so Carbonite works this way. And it's the method in which the Blackstorm video servers also load their video and alpha channels. So there's a consistency in how we number our channels for video and alpha. If I want to eject something out of the channel, I can hit the eject button. Now, obviously, I can load that back in because it was in RAM cache, so it's instantaneous. I also don't have to eject if I want to load something else in. But if I want to eject it so that it's not sitting in a channel, because if something is in a channel, it is now reserved, meaning it won't allow it to be flushed out of the RAM cache. So that's why I would want to eject it. The other method for getting an eject is to simply load still 0. There is no 0. 0 is also eject. So we go to 99, hit enter, away it comes. There's also the ability to hit the play button right from this menu as well. So if I look at my defaults, I can see what will load into those channels every time the switcher comes up in a default state. Or I press Reload Global Defaults. So the other item we talked about is being able to view that cache, because when we were capturing recall, it tells us the available number of frames. So when we go into View Cache, I can see all the items that are in cache and the physical size that they are consuming. Notice how that live lower third, because it's 1920 by 150 and it's 91 frames, it's still less than half the size of those full frame 31 frame animations, because again, it's taking up less bits. So this is why it's very valuable to only capture what is needed. And you'll notice my 46 frames is 254 megabytes, so that's taking it up. So when I look at my global store, I see I have 12 items in RAM cache. The total size is 4 gigabytes, so 4,275 megabytes. And we currently have about 3.3 or 3.2 gigs of space available to us. Now, when we look down the list, you'll notice a 1080 image with no alpha channel is 5.5 megabytes. The benefit of having the alpha channels being embedded is you'll notice it is not double. So what that means is that when I use a Targa or a PNG with embedded alpha, when we load that, we don't care about the rest of the YUV color space. All we care about is the Luma space for the alpha channel. So here, we merely load the data needed. So this is more like a 4224 than two 422s. All right? So what that does for us is it allows us to use less overall memory space. And that's also why we get more frames of animation, and it is not twice the size that it needs to be. All right, so we now have things in RAM cache. When RAM cache fills up, it will automatically start throwing things off the bottom of the list. But if I want to get rid of something in the middle of the list, I select it and I say remove from cache. However, here, it's not possible and cannot be removed from cache. And that's because these items are currently sitting in the channels. So that's why we need that eject function. Being able to eject it will allow me to then remove it from cache, thus freeing up this space. Now, if it automatically is out of the channel and sitting there, the system will manage the cache on its own. As things get called up again, so here, let's look at item number 192. So if in channel 1 we called up 192, we go back to that menu, you'll now see it's at the top of the list. As we bring 99 back in, you'll notice it now moves to the top of the list. And then we bring in 97. And now it moves back up to the top of the list. So you can see how the cache auto-manages things and puts things down as it's the oldest thing used. So this becomes very helpful in that as we load things we haven't used in a long time, don't care about, we don't have to manually go back in and manage this cache. You'll be able to auto cache on its own. This would only be useful, say we did a really big capture of like 500 frames, and that 500 frames is sitting in here. Well, if I needed this out of the way so I could load or capture something bigger, I'd want to come in here and clear everything out. So remember how over here in capture, we're currently sitting at a maximum of 679 frames. Well, why is that 679 frames? Just a minute ago, it was only 663. But remember, when we captured this guy, where'd it go? We want cache. When we captured this, it was 60 frames. But we then trimmed it before saving it to the hard drive. So when we saved it to the hard drive, it dumped the other frames out of cache because they were no longer needed. So when it put it back in, it put in 46 frames. So it freed up those frames so that in the capture menu, we now have gotten them back as available frames to be able to be used to capture. So if we want to free up even more space so that we can do a larger capture, I could simply come in and I could say remove from cache, remove from cache. So if we go back to capture now to get something else, this overall size is going to increase as we move about. So if we go back to view cache and we refresh, we now have less items in the cache. So as we do things, you'll be able to capture more and more. The maximum capture is 773 frames. So this is showing us that it'll capture up to the maximum. If we want, if we come in and we eject all these elements, so now that those are no longer in cache, so even though they're still in the cache, we haven't gotten rid of them, they are no longer reserving space. So now that extra 60 frames can be accessed. So this is essentially how that capture will work automatically for you. And you'll notice if we say I want to capture with alpha, that number changes automatically for you to show you the total number of frames that can be captured in this mode. And of course, you can capture it, clip it, save it to the hard drive, eject it from the channel, and then move on to caching the next item. So that's how you're able to go about caching, how you're able to capture, assign your defaults, eject, and manage your cache. So when you look at the media stores, just remember there are two ways to move items in and out. One is via the USB right here on the panel, so through this USB port, and the other is to connect to the MediaStore hard drive via the network. So it's just an FTP connection, and you'll be able to mount it and drag and drop files. So this is how we use the media stores, how they work with the switcher, and in a future segment, we're going to cover how to integrate them with the custom controls. So thanks for looking at this media store segment, and we look forward to seeing you the next time here at Acuity U.